Hey there everyone, it's Asinjo again, and I'm here with another skill video, but this time we're going to be checking out the elves' abilities. For the ones that aren't interested in any type of commentary and just want to get straight to the skills and the numbers, I also have an abridged version of this video that's going to be linked in this video as well as in the description. First up on our list is going to be the elf skill Power Shot. This is going to be the elves' equivalent of a power attack skill that the melee characters have, but it doesn't have any type of invulnerability. But what it makes up in is that you can use it from the air and use a bunch of dodges to get more shots and to get you out of trouble and get you more damage. It allows you to get much more damage than a typical shot would give you, and with the added bonus, it basically penetrates all enemies in a line, unlike normal arrows. Though, just to let you know, you will get some bows that let your normal arrows penetrate enemies. Most of an elf's typical arrow damage is going to come from power shot arrows in combination with other skills like clone strikes and impact arrow. In this footage you're going to see the elf's gradual aesthetic increase in the power shot skill. It's very similar to the power attack skills of the melee characters like the Amazon's Brutal Drive or the fighter's Rebuke. It's just a little bit harder to spot because you can see it when you shoot the arrow. It basically creates a circular shockwave that decreases in size the further the arrow travels. But you can really see it once you get to power shot level 10. To be honest with you, I'm not sure if the shockwave effect is just aesthetics or if it gives the arrow a bigger hitbox, but it's something you could probably test out for yourself. If anything, the most important part of the skill, like any other power attack related skill, it's always going to increase the amount of damage the further you put points into it. The power shot skill, in my personal opinion, is one of those skills that feels like a must-have because it's going to be one of the most basic ways that you're going to be putting out damage. Well, this is just a suggestion because everybody has their own way they want to play the game, and there isn't any one set way to play a character in Dragon's Crown. The skill maxes out with 27 skill points total. As for the elf's skill Rapid Fire, it's a very straightforward arrow-based technique that simply increases the number of arrows that you can shoot in quick succession, allowing you to shoot up to 5 arrows in a row normally. Now this applies to all types of shots that the elf has, except her dashing shot. So that means her standard circle shot, her crouching up shot, and her jumping shot. You can also add one power shot into the mix with a rapid fire volley, which means the standard circle shot and the crouching up shot for clone strikes, which means technically you can shoot up to 9 arrows in a rapid fire volley. So 4 normal shots, and then the 1 clone strikes, if you go and you have it at max level, it's going to be 5 additional shots somewhere in there. Another good thing to note is that you can also change directions for every shot that you do, whether it's on the ground or in the air. This skill is really great for finishing off enemies and maximizing your DPS. It works really good with the elf's rainbow bow that you can get from the Mirage Tower, which gives you a chance of not using arrows when you shoot them. Luckily, the levels of rapid fire are super straightforward, just like the skill itself. Each additional level is going to give you another arrow to shoot, and luckily it's not too much of a skill investment because it maxes out at 11 skill points total. With the elf's skill Spacious Quiver, there isn't really much to say about it because it's simply a skill that increases your ammo count up to 25 arrows. Having max arrows is really crucial for doing as much damage as you can do, especially if you're having a hard time generating or finding more arrows for yourself. A higher ammo count is always a good thing. And even though the description for this skill is really simple, it's really important to have as many arrows as you can have, especially if you're in a party with other elves. Because I remember those good old times where the game was new and you would have like a party with like 4 elves. And not to sound too savage, but I literally compared it to 4 starving orphans fighting over food. Because that's what it was like. There wasn't enough for everybody to share. Spacious Quiver maxes out at 12 skill points total. Next up, we're going to be talking about the elf's skill Impact Arrow. With Impact Arrow, it's a really useful skill that creates a shockwave for your jumping down power shot and your crouching up power shot. The shockwave tacks on additional damage for your power shots once they make contact with the ground. It's really great for clearing out mobs and getting extra damage on large bosses or champion style monsters. With the following footage, you're basically going to see the shockwave gradually grow through levels 1 through 7 of Impact Arrow. With level 1 of Impact Arrow, that shockwave is not much taller than the elf and not as wide. But once you get all the way to Impact Arrow level 7, the shockwave is taller than the elf and about twice as wide. And this is also going to apply for multiple charge shots, mainly with clone strikes, so the more arrows you have with that skill, the more Impact Arrow is going to influence your damage. Much like all the other shockwave type skills, the more points that you put into this, the bigger the shockwave is going to get, and the more damage you're going to net for all the levels that you put into it. This skill maxes out at 17 skill points total. Next up, we're going to be talking about the elf's skill Clone Strike. It's one of the elf's best moves in terms of bursting out damage. This skill increases the number of simultaneous shots that she can do from her crouching charge up shot and her dash attack shot. As mentioned earlier, you can use the charge up shot version once during your rapid fire volleys, and the additional damage that you get from high levels of Impact Arrow makes clone strikes even better, especially on big bosses. From the footage here, you can see that clone strikes is another very straightforward arrow skill for the elf. The higher you level up the move, the more simultaneous shots you're getting, ranging from 2 shots at level 1 to 5 shots at level 4. Just from higher levels of clone strikes, you can see just how much real estate on the actual board it's taken up. You can easily tell, like I was mentioning before, it's really good for clearing out mobs if you can kite them and guide them in the right way. Throughout my time playing the elf, I've gone back and forth between 2 to 4 levels of clone strikes, but I ended up settling with the max level of 4 just because I wanted all the damage that I could get. But just remember how easy it is to run out of arrows when she's shooting 5 arrows all the time. So if you're having trouble keeping up with those arrows, you might want to get a lower level of that until you get a better feel on how to get more arrows and keep those arrow counts up when you're fighting. To max out clone strikes, it only takes 11 skill points total. Next up on our list is going to be the elf skill Toxic Extract. With this skill, it's basically a limited use buff that enchants your arrows and your daggers with poison property, which means both of those can inflict the poison status effect, which gives that nice slowdown effect as well. This ability creates poison clouds for all shots that hit the ground, which means the dash shot, clone strikes, and your jumping neutral, technically your down shot. I personally don't use this skill that much because of its limited usage, but you do get some gear in Mirage Tower that lets you swap the poison property out for ice arrows, so keep that in mind because it's a really cool effect. There really isn't much to tell about the different skill levels of Toxic Extract. The first level just gives you access to the poison effect with 20 uses, and when you max it out, you get 50 uses. The skill maxes out at 12 skill points total. The next elf skill we're going to be talking about is Holdout Dagger. Now this skill is more for people like myself who love to use backstab, which I'm going to talk about in a few moments. It basically aids you in painting the fence on somebody's back, but with a knife. And when I mean a knife, I mean up to 9 knives that you can pull out whenever you want, so you can get your backstab damage when it's easiest for you. Because you get 9 uses for 9 daggers, I feel like it has more longevity with its uses, especially if you have high levels of maintenance, which is basically going to sometimes make 9 stabs turn into 18 stabs or more. Because this is another tool skill for the elf, it's another one that's really straightforward. The first level just gives you access to 3 daggers, when the max level ends up giving you access to 9 daggers. And the skill itself maxes out at 9 skill points total. Next up, we're going to talk about the elf skill Salamander Oil. Now honestly, early on playing the game, this was definitely a fan favorite for me because for one, it looks really cool, and 2, it's always awesome to burn things with fire if you want to get rid of it. It's a limited usage buff skill just like Toxic Extract, but it gives your arrows and your daggers fire property instead of poison. This ability creates large fire pillars for all shots that hit the ground, like with dash shot, clone strikes, and your jumping down shot, which is really great for some fire-based damage over time. This works really good against natural enemies and bosses, especially like the Doom Beetle and the Killer Rabbit. Another thing is for really big bosses, it's really nice where you can just put the flame pillars out there and just keep moving and doing other things, such as like Medusa or the Chimera. I don't use Salamander Oil much anymore because I feel like it's harder to replenish even with runes and equipment, but I do still feel like it's a fun skill to use and shouldn't be neglected if you really like it. The first level just gives you access to the skill with 20 uses, just like Toxic Extract, and the maximum level is going to give you 50 uses. When you increase skills like Salamander Oil and Toxic Extract, there isn't any change in any damage or effect, you just get more uses of said skill. The skill itself is going to max out at 12 points total. We're going to be looking at elemental lore this time. Now personally, this is one of my favorite skills for the elf, and for me the most fun. The skill allows you to utilize spirit magic to do various types of magic based attacks depending on what type of element you have around you. The skill always reminded me of the Geomancer class from Final Fantasy Tactics, which was a class that let you manifest skills based on the type of terrain that you were on. Without even being close to an element, the elf gets a default tornado that she can use and put out to rack up some damage. But she can basically get different types of elemental attacks depending on what she's next to. For example, she'll get fire-based attacks if she's next to a torch using Salamander Oil, water-based attacks if she's standing in water or next to a water spout, and she can even gain different types of elemental attacks based on what elemental attacks your teammates are using. Like if you're next to a wizard or a sorceress or another elf that already did some type of elemental based lore. Heck, you can even proc elemental lore off of yourself from doing stuff like elemental lore or sliding with an element. As you're going to see in the footage, the neutral wind tornado will grow in size as you increase the level of the lore, even though it doesn't actually mention this in the skill description. I didn't record any levels of the special elemental lore because I saw no visible increase in the size per level for the different types, such as the fire attacks or like the water attacks. Just know that it will definitely be doing more damage the higher you get the skill. The first level of this skill simply gives you access to the skill, and each additional level continues to increase the strength until you reach level 10. The skill gets maxed out with 24 skill points total. As for the elf skill Deadly Boots, it's an ability that increases the damage of all of the elf's kick attacks, but instead of the typical percentage damage up, your kicks will add a certain percentage of the defense value to the overall damage of your kicks. At max level, you're going to be doing 300% of the boot's defense added to your actual kick damage. At level 99, boots give you 60 defense, so I always assumed you would have 180 attack added to your kicks. Though I'm not really sure how that equates to actual damage numbers though. There will always be points where you're low on arrows and you need to use your kicks to gain more of those arrows or just preserve your durability. And when you couple it with boots that also raise your overall kick damage and factor in the True Fist runes, I feel like it's a really practical skill to use, especially if elemental lore or backstab aren't really your thing. This skill maxes out at 27 points total. Next, we're talking about one of my old school favorite elf skills, which is backstab. And the skill allows you to do large amounts of damage when you attack an enemy's back with a dagger. Despite how harmless the swipes and stabs might look, it's nothing to mess around with at high levels. The skill has always been one of my favorites since the game release, because my buddy Mundy always hyped it up so much and made a bunch of backstab puns, which made it even more amusing. It's another one of those skills that has many ways to make it better with your gear, since you have accessories that you can get in Mirage Tower that can increase your overall back attack damage as well as your overall dagger damage. You can also tack on additional elemental damage with Salamander Oil on enemies that are weak against fire, such as Doom Beetle, Killer Rabbit, and the Gazer. You can also use high levels of maintenance to get way more stabs than you're supposed to have. A major downside of this skill usually comes in solo play. If you're not in a team and all the enemies are looking at you, sometimes it's really hard to find a back to actually stab. When you also factor in Holdout Dagger, you can basically have backstab whenever you want. Every level of backstab increases your overall back attack damage, with daggers starting at 80% more damage and ending off with 300% more damage at the max level. You can max out backstab with 26 skill points total. The last skill that we're going to talk about is the elf skill Battle Harden. It's another practical skill with the elf that lets her resist knockdown and knockback, as well as take a nice percentage of damage from incoming attacks when she's charging up her bow for a power shot. It's always better to dodge out of the way normally as the elf, but sometimes you'll run out of dodges, other times you just might not want to give up your position. So this skill is going to let you have better chances to stand your ground and just take the shot that you need. The skill starts off with 20% more damage reduction and 50 knockback resistance, and maxes out at 50% damage reduction and 83 knockback resistance. Maxing out the skill is going to cost you 12 skill points total. That's going to be about it for the skill video for the elf. For the ones that did take the time to check out the video and enjoyed it, I really appreciate the support. It means a lot as always. The next character that's going to get a skill video like this is going to be the dwarf. So for you two swole, sidewalk cracking enemies throwing bomb chucking enthusiasts, look forward to the next video. And as always, thank you for the time of day.